2 months had passed since the ritual of the waxing moon. Since Cedric, the Prince Maya had loved for 10 years, left her alone in the center of the sacred circle, in front of the entire court, as if she were nobody. And it was right there, in the moment her world collapsed, that fate decided to rewrite the story. King Cailan stepped down from the throne, took her hand before everyone, and claimed that wolfless girl as his queen. Since then, Maya was the king's woman, the Queen of Thornwald, the bearer of ancient blood, who made the council bow and forced kings and elders to swallow their pride. The court that once despised her now lowered their heads when she walked by. But every choice has a price. On the morning Maya's ancient blood was revealed, Cedric vanished. He left before dawn, riding his black horse. Far from the castle, the perfect prince became a shadow. He traded armor for bottles, honor for cheap wine, and hid in border taverns as if he could drown guilt at the bottom of every cup. What Cedric has no idea about is that fate is not done with him. While Maya learns to be queen beside the most feared king on the continent, the fallen prince is about to cross paths with someone who was not sent by chance, a northern warrior named Kira. And when the two of them meet, it will not only be Cedric's life that changes, but the future of all Thornwald. And that future was already beginning. Chapter 1. But that morning, as Maya woke in Cailan's arms, something in the air felt different. A tension she could not quite identify. A pressure brushing against her newly sharpened senses. Cailan was already awake. She noticed it by the rhythm of his breathing, the way his muscles held a barely noticeable tension. "You're thinking too loud," she murmured against his chest, her lips brushing the warm skin just above his heart. She felt more than heard his quiet laugh, a deep vibration that made her smile. "Sorry," Cailan said, voice rough with sleep, yet already heavy with real worries. "I didn't want to wake you." Maya lifted her head, resting her chin on his chest so she could see his face. In the soft morning light, he looked younger, dark hair tousled, stubble shadowing his strong jaw, gray eyes softer than he allowed them to be during the day. "What's wrong?" she asked. Cailan hesitated. Even after everything, even with their mate bond pulsing between them, he still fought the instinct to carry every burden alone. "Cailan," Maya insisted, tracing the line of his jaw with her fingers. "We promised. No secrets." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. When he opened them again, vulnerability flickered there, a version of him only Maya was allowed to see. "Emissaries from 3 kingdoms arrived today," he finally said. "Valdris, Morwen, and Starin. All at the same time, each with urgent diplomatic proposals." Maya frowned, processing that. "That is unusual?" "It is unprecedented." Cailan shifted, sitting up and pulling Maya with him, wrapping her in the sheets before the morning chill could reach her. "Those kingdoms have never been allies. They barely tolerate one another. And suddenly they all want an audience on the same day? You think this is about me?" It wasn't a question. Maya already knew the answer by how his shoulders tensed. "Your power has become known beyond our borders," he said carefully. "Ancient blood hasn't awakened in centuries. Kings of other realms are cautious. Some say afraid." "Afraid I'll do what? Invade their lands with my wolf?" The joke slipped out more bitter than she meant. Cailan turned to her, holding her face in his hands, gentle, despite the strength she knew lived in every muscle. "They fear the unknown," he said. "And you, my queen, are gloriously unknown. A warrior who never had a wolf, and now carries a lineage that makes the elders tremble. Mate to a king already powerful enough to keep them in line. Together." He paused, and something like awe glimmered in his eyes. "Together, we are something this continent hasn't seen in a very long time. Scary enough to unite enemies? Perhaps." Silence pressed between them, heavy, alive. Outside, the castle stirred awake. Footsteps in hallways, distant clanking of armor on the training grounds, muffled voices of advisors already gathering for the hearings of the day. "There's more," she said, reading his face. "Something you're not telling me." He exhaled, defeated. Hiding anything from her now was nearly impossible, not with the mate bond revealing every emotion he struggled to suppress. "Cedric," he said at last. "No one has heard from him since he left. Not even my informants can track him." Something tightened in Maya's chest. Not the old love she once felt, but something more complicated. Concern, maybe. Or guilt for not feeling more than that. "You're worried about him." "He is my brother." Kaelin looked away, vulnerability replaced by something harder. Self-protection. "Whatever happened between us, he is still my blood. And a missing prince of Thornwald is a weakness our enemies can exploit." "You think the emissaries know where he is?" "I don't know, but I will find out." Kaelin rose, conversation firmly over. Maya watched as he dressed with the precise efficiency of a man raised for battle. First simple clothing, then the formal tunic with the silver-embroidered royal crest, and finally the heavy king's mantle that seemed to add years to his stance. When he finished, he was no longer the man who held her through the night. He was Kaelin, King of Thornwald, and the transformation was both breathtaking and painful to witness. He turned back before leaving, leaning down to kiss her. Not with the passion of the night before, but with such tenderness it made Maya's eyes sting. "Stay here," he murmured against her lips. "Rest. The hearings will be long and dull. No need to endure that." But Maya was already sitting up, shaking her head. "I am your queen," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "Wherever you are, I am there, especially if there are threats." Pride, love, and something close to gratitude flickered across his face. "Then come," he said, extending his hand. "We face them together." And when Maya laced her fingers with his, she felt their mate bond pulse. Strong, unbreakable, eternal. While the king and queen of Thornwald prepared for hearings that could shape the fate of their kingdom, hundreds of kilometers away, in a forgotten tavern on the borderlands, another fate was about to tangle with theirs. And it arrived wrapped in tobacco smoke, cheap wine, and the drunken laughter of a prince who didn't want to be found. The tavern, the Broken Dagger, didn't earn its name by accident. Perched at a crossroads between 3 different kingdoms, none particularly eager to claim that desolate stretch of land, it served as refuge for anyone who preferred not to be found. Mercenaries between jobs, merchants dodging debts, fallen nobles drinking to forget former glory. And for 6 weeks, a prince. Cedric sat at his usual table, the darkest corner of the main hall, surrounded by empty bottles multiplying like silent witnesses to his downfall. The tavern buzzed that night, market day in the nearby village, bringing in all manner of scum to drink, gamble, and buy company. The air was thick with tobacco smoke, bad wine, and sweat. Tallow candles flickered in rusted iron chandeliers, casting trembling shadows that made every face look dangerous. A drunken bard butchered a tune from the far corner. Mercenaries rolled dice near the hearth, laughing with loud, violent joy. And Cedric drank. He drank to forget the emptiness he'd seen in his own eyes when Maya transformed before the court. He drank to silence Kaelin's voice echoing in his mind. "You never truly wanted her. You wanted what she represented to your ego." He drank because drowning himself in terrible wine was easier than facing the coward he'd become. 2 women sat with him. Or 3. He'd lost count. They laughed at jokes he didn't remember telling, touched his arm with practiced familiarity, refilled his cup whenever it emptied. He paid well. They pretended well. It worked. "More wine, my lord?" one asked, leaning so far forward her breast nearly spilled from her neckline. Cedric pushed his cup toward her, unfocused eyes scanning the tavern crowd for anything remotely interesting. Dice gamblers, drunken bard. 3 hooded men near the door, speaking in voices too low to hear. Nothing interesting. Nothing worth his wine-blurred attention. He took another long drink. The wine was awful, sour, watered down, probably mixed with something no one should ingest. But it burned going down. The burn was real, something he could feel, when everything else was a fog. Then the tavern door opened. Cedric barely registered it. People came and went constantly. But something in the atmosphere shifted. Subtle, but undeniable. He lifted his hazy gaze and saw her. A woman, but not like the others who roamed the tavern for coins and fleeting company. She wore dark leather trousers and a practical tunic beneath a road-stained travel cloak, boots worn from long miles. And when her eyes swept the room, eyes like tempered steel, Cedric felt something jolt through his drunken spine. She wasn't looking for alcohol. She was looking for someone. She moved to the bar, murmured something to the barkeep too quietly for Cedric to hear, then chose a table near the door. Strategic. Easy exit. Cedric watched, because he had nothing better to do, as she sat with her back to the wall, gaze constantly scanning, like a soldier, like a warrior. Interesting. He drank again, letting alcohol smother the curiosity trying to spark inside his chest. Why care about a stranger? He had wine, paid affection, and the lovely promise of waking tomorrow, not remembering his own name. Then he felt it again, that sensation of being watched. Cedric turned, slow, clumsy, and found the woman staring straight at him. Not flirtation, not greed, something calculating, assessing threat, or prey. Their eyes locked across the smoky tavern, and something unfamiliar pulsed inside him. Sharp, electric, probably the wine, or finally, complete madness. She looked away first, sipping from the beer the barkeep delivered. Cedric frowned at his own reaction, shook his head. Mistake. The world spun. He focused again on the women at his table. 5 minutes later, he looked again. She was still there, still watching. And now Cedric noticed something else. She wasn't only watching him. She was watching the 3 hooded men by the door. The same men who, Cedric realized through a cold stab of clarity, were also watching him. One had a hand hidden inside his cloak. Another checked the exits. The third calculated distance and angles. Cedric knew those movements. Years of military training didn't vanish, even drowned in wine. These were not merchants. They were assassins. And they were there for him. He should have felt fear. Should have run. Or fought. But Cedric discovered, with a sick sort of clarity, that he didn't care enough. If they wanted to kill him, let them. It might even be easier. He drank again, closed his eyes, and waited for the inevitable. Then he felt someone beside him. He opened his eyes to find the warrior, standing so close he could see mud on her boots, wear on her dagger hilt, the hardened line of her jaw. And gods, she was interesting, not conventionally beautiful. There was a sharpness to her features, a thin scar cutting through her left eyebrow, a posture that screamed danger. But something about her made his drunken heart beat faster. "Is this seat free?" she asked, voice surprisingly soft for someone who looked capable of killing with her bare hands. Cedric blinked, then smiled, that sloppy smile he used whenever he was too drunk to care about dignity. "For you." He gestured grandly toward the empty chair, nearly knocking over a bottle. "Always." She sat without ceremony, shoving bottles aside. The women at his table exchanged a look, realized they were no longer needed, and drifted off. Cedric hardly noticed. He was too busy trying to keep her storm-gray eyes in focus. "You're drinking alone," she observed, eyeing the bottles with something like disapproval. "Technically, I had company," Cedric slurred. "But they left. Women. Always leaving." He snorted at his own misery and raised his cup. "Want a drink with me? I'm very good at paying for drinks, and other things." He winked, or tried to. She stared at him, expression balanced between disgust and disbelief. "I do not drink while I'm working," she said flatly. "Working?" Cedric leaned forward, nearly losing balance. "What kind of work does a pretty woman like you do in a place like this?" His gaze dropped down her body, slow and shameless. "Because if it's the kind of work I'm thinking of," he flashed the smile that used to make women blush, "I pay very well. Very. There's a room upstairs. Nothing fancy, but the bed is decent and I am an idiotic drunk," she cut in, sharp as a blade. Cedric blinked, offended but somehow amused. "That's rude," he said, grinning anyway. "Usually women are nicer when they're trying to get my money. I don't want your money, you fool, and I am definitely not the kind of woman you're imagining." "Shame," Cedric muttered, grabbing more wine. "You'd be an improvement already." He drank, throat burning. When he lowered the cup, she was still staring, with an expression he couldn't decipher. "You truly have no idea what kind of danger you're in, do you?" she asked. "And was that concern?" Cedric laughed, bitter and broken. "Danger is my middle name, sweetheart. Or it was. Now it's more like Cedric the disaster, Cedric the coward, Cedric the prince," she murmured. The word sliced through the fog in his mind. "I don't know what you're—" "3 men," she interrupted again, leaning closer, so close he smelled her. Leather, road dust, and something else that made his heart stumble in a way that was not fear. "Table by the door. Hooded. They're here to kill you." Cedric blinked, then laughed. "That's a terrible joke, really." "It's not a joke, you drunk idiot." Frustration sharpened every syllable. "They are assassins. Hired to eliminate the missing Prince of Thornwald before anyone can use him as leverage." The truth took several seconds to sink into his wine-soaked brain. "Oh," he finally said. "That's bad?" She shut her eyes like she was praying for patience. "Yes, Prince, that is bad. Don't call me that," Cedric snapped, harsher than intended. "I'm no prince anymore. I'm just nobody." Something flickered across her face. Pity? Anger? Hard to tell through the haze. "Well, that nobody is about to get his throat slit if he doesn't listen to me." She stood in one smooth motion. "Let's go. Now." "Go where?" Cedric asked, not moving. "To a place where I can get you out without them noticing." She held out a hand. "There's an empty room upstairs. We make them think you're busy, then slip out through the back." Cedric looked at her hand, then her face, and smiled, a sad, drunken parody of charm. "Ah," he drawled. "So you do want to go to a room with me." "You could have just said that. No need for this whole assassin story." He stood, wobbling, nearly falling, and gripped her hand too tightly. "I knew you were after me. Women always are. Can't blame them. I'm very idiotic," she finished, dragging him toward the stairs. Cedric allowed it, grinning at whoever might be watching. "Look at that," he announced loudly. "The prince found company for the night." Her fingers tightened painfully around his. "Shut up," she hissed, "and walk." "I am walking. You're bossy, you know that. It's attractive. I like bossy women." He stumbled on the steps. She caught him before he kissed the floor. "By the gods," she muttered. "What have I done to deserve this?" But she kept going, half dragging a drunken prince who had no idea the woman trying to save him was his destined mate, and that the assassins downstairs were just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Chapter 2. The sound of claws against stone echoed across the training grounds as the sun had barely started to touch the castle towers. Maya was running. Not in her human form, but on 4 paws, black fur gleaming under the golden morning light, muscles stretching and contracting in a rhythm she was still learning to control. Her wolf was big. And with that size came a power that still scared her. The raw strength of ancient muscles, sharpened senses that picked up every breath, every heartbeat within a radius of 100 meters, and something deeper. Something old that pulsed in her veins like an underground river, waiting to surface. She turned sharply, trying to mimic the move Kaylin had shown her the night before, and ended up skidding on the damp grass, her hind paws slipping in a rather pathetic way. "Focus on your center of gravity," Kaylin's voice carried across the field. He was leaning against one of the stone stands, arms crossed, watching her with that intensity that made Maya's heart, even in wolf form, beat faster. "You're thinking like a human. Let the wolf lead." Maya shifted back, the change happening in seconds. Bones rearranging, fur withdrawing, senses readjusting. She was naked, but had stopped caring about that during training. Kaylin always had a cloak ready to wrap around her, and besides, no one else was allowed on the grounds at that hour. The king had made sure of it. "Let the wolf lead," she repeated, taking the cloak he offered and wrapping it around herself. Easy to say when your wolf has been with you since childhood. Kaylin stepped closer, something in his eyes. Pride, but also concern. "You're progressing faster than anyone I have ever seen," he said, brushing her cheek with gentle fingers. 2 weeks ago, you could barely shift without nearly passing out. Now you're running, hunting, and falling pathetically whenever I try to turn. Maya cut in, though she was smiling. "You will master it." There was no hope in his voice, only certainty. "Your blood carries memories of wolves who ran these lands centuries before any of us were born. You just have to learn to listen." Maya nodded, but before she could answer, she felt something. It was subtle, so subtle she almost missed it. A strange tug in her chest, as if something invisible were calling to her. She turned her head toward the castle, frowning. "What is it?" Kaylin asked immediately, his posture shifting from patient teacher to alert warrior in a heartbeat. "I don't know," Maya said slowly. "It's just a strange feeling. Like..." She did not know how to explain. It was as if she could sense the entire castle pulsing around her. Not physically, but on another level. And something was wrong. Something out of place. "Someone is coming," she said at last. "Or they are already here? I can't explain it." Kaylin's eyes narrowed. The emissaries would not arrive this early. The audiences are only this afternoon. "It's not them," Maya insisted, the sensation growing stronger. "It's different." Kaylin studied her for a long moment, and then something like understanding flickered in his gaze. "Your territorial power," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "It's starting to awaken." Before Maya could ask what that meant, a guard came running across the field, breathless. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing quickly. "Forgive the interruption, but there is a visitor at the gates, an elder. She says she came to see the Queen." Maya and Kaylin exchanged a look. "Name?" Kaylin asked. "Yrsa, Your Majesty. She says she knew the Queen's parents." Maya's world stopped. She knew her parents. The words rang in her mind like a distant bell, dragging with them a wave of emotion she was not ready to face. Her parents had died when she was only 8, loyal guards who fell defending the kingdom's borders. She had so few memories of them, faded fragments of smiling faces and calloused hands lifting her into the air. And now, there was someone who had known them. "Bring her to the private audience chamber," Kaylin ordered the guard. Then he turned to Maya, taking her hands. "Do you want me to go with you?" Maya wanted to say yes. She wanted his strength beside her, the comfort of their mate bond anchoring her. But something deeper, something instinctive, told her this was something she needed to face alone. "No," she said at last. "But stay close." He kissed her forehead. Always. The private audience chamber was smaller than the Great Hall, but no less impressive. Maya walked in wearing a simple dress Marta had brought in a hurry. Her hair was still damp from the quick bath after training, gathered back in a plain braid, and standing in the center of the room, lit by a shaft of sunlight, was the oldest woman Maya had ever seen. Yrsa was tiny, bent with age, leaning on a gnarled wooden staff that looked as ancient as she did. Her hair was white as snow, braided with dark wooden beads that clicked softly whenever she moved. But it was her eyes that held Maya, dark, deep, and so sharp they seemed able to read every thought she had ever had. "Queen Maya," the elder said, her voice surprisingly steady for someone so frail. "You have your mother's eyes, and your father's stance when he was about to go into battle." Maya felt her throat tighten. You really knew them?" "I did." Yrsa walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate. "I was the one who brought you into this world, child. I held your mother as she screamed, cut the cord that bound you to her, cleaned you and placed you in her arms for the very first time." Tears burned in Maya's eyes before she could stop them. "They never talked about where they came from," she managed. "About the bloodline. About anything. Because they were afraid." Yrsa stopped in front of her, raising a trembling hand to touch Maya's face. Afraid that knowledge would become a burden too heavy for a child. Afraid others would learn the truth before the right time. Afraid they would fail the promise they made. What promise? Yrsa lowered her hand and moved to one of the windows, looking out over the gardens. "Your mother was the last daughter of the eternal moon pack of the mountain regions," she said, every word heavy enough for Maya to feel it. "A bloodline that goes back to the first wolves who walked these lands, before kingdoms existed, before crowns were forged. They were called guardians, protectors of territory, sentinels of the land, wolves whose connection to the moon and to the very soil they walked was so strong they could sense threats before they arrived." Maya's heart kicked hard in her chest. "And my father?" "Descendant of the Guardians of the North, another ancient line, warriors who defended the borders of the frozen lands." Yrsa turned back to her. "When they came together, the villages knew. Something powerful would be born of that union. Something that had not been seen in centuries. Me," Maya whispered. "You." The silence that followed was thick with meaning. Maya walked to one of the chairs and sat, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. "Why did they come here?" she asked. "To Thornwald?" "Because they were called." Yrsa slowly took the chair beside her. "Guardians feel where they are needed, child. It is part of what we are. Your father felt this kingdom needed protection. Your mother felt you needed to grow here, that your fate was tied to this place, to this crown." Maya thought of Kaelin, of the mate bond still pulsing between them even now, and understood. "They knew," she said quietly. "About him, about us." "Not in detail," Yrsa corrected gently. "But they knew you were meant for something greater, that the ancient blood did not sleep in you by chance, that when the right moment came, when you met the one worthy of being guarded by you, your wolf would awaken. And they died." Maya's tears finally spilled over. "Protecting this kingdom, fulfilling their role as guardians." "Yes." Yrsa cradled Maya's hand between her own, surprisingly warm despite her age. "And now you carry that promise, not as a burden, but as a purpose. You are the guardian your mother always knew you would become." Maya wept then, not from grief alone, but something more layered. Relief, perhaps, or acceptance, or the dawning understanding that her entire life, all the years of humiliation and pain, had been leading her to this moment, to become who she was, always meant to be. When she finally managed to steady herself, Maya wiped her eyes and met Yrsa's gaze with renewed resolve. "You came to teach me," she said. "I came to remind you," Yrsa replied with a small smile. "The knowledge is already in you, in the memories carried in your blood, in the recollections of every guardian who came before. You just have to learn to listen." "How?" The elder's eyes gleamed. "We start tonight, under the moon." The hours that followed passed in a blur. Maya tried to focus on the day's duties, meals with Kaelin, her required presence during the audiences with the emissaries who arrived right on time in the afternoon. But her mind was elsewhere, processing everything Yrsa had revealed, trying to fit together the pieces of a puzzle that was finally beginning to make sense. The emissaries were interesting. All three kingdoms, Valdris, Morwen, and Starin, sent representatives who spoke in polite diplomatic tones about trade and borders, yet whose eyes kept drifting to Maya, assessing, measuring, fearing. She could feel their fear as something almost physical, and the sensation was both satisfying and unsettling. "They are right to be afraid," Kaelin murmured in her ear during a break between audiences. "You are terrifying when you want to be." Maya was not sure whether that was praise or concern. But it was Sarah Valtoria who finally shattered the thin layer of composure Maya had been clinging to. The redhead had stayed at the castle since Cedric's departure, a constant venomous presence Maya tried her best to ignore. But that afternoon, as Maya walked through the gardens, trying to clear her head before her night training with Yrsa, she heard voices coming from behind a rosebush. "Do you really believe it?" Sarah's voice was sweet as poisoned honey. That she just awakened a wolf after 23 years? Convenient, don't you think? "Lady Sarah?" A male voice tried to cut in, but she went on. "And the timing? Right after the king claimed her? After she desperately needed to prove she was worthy?" Sarah laughed, a clear, cruel sound. "I am not the only one thinking it. Half the court believes she bewitched him somehow. Ancient blood, they say." "But what kind of power is that, really? Power to manipulate? To seduce a king and make him forget his own brother?" Maya should have walked away. She should have ignored it, as she always did. But something inside her, maybe the wolf, maybe just the exhaustion of months as the target of whispers, snapped. She stepped around the rosebush. Sarah stood surrounded by 3 young nobles, men Maya vaguely recognized from meals in the hall. They all went pale when they saw her, but Sarah only smiled. "Queen Maya," she said, dropping into an exaggerated curtsy. "We did not see you there." "Clearly." Maya's voice came out colder than she intended. "Please, continue, Lady Sarah. What else is the court saying about me?" Sarah's smile faltered for just a heartbeat. "I was not. Do not lie." Maya took a step closer and watched with grim satisfaction as the nobles edged back. "You have been spreading poison since you arrived. Saying I bewitch the king. That my power is somehow... what? Dark? Dangerous?" "I simply voice concerns many share," Sarah replied, regaining her composure. "It is my duty as a noble of this realm to question." "Your duty," Maya cut in, "was to leave when you realized the prince did not want you. Instead, you stayed, spreading lies and trying to smear my name because you did not get what you came for." Sarah's face flushed a furious red. "How dare you? I dare because I am your queen." The words left Maya with a weight of authority that surprised even her. "And if I hear one more whisper, one more insinuation, one more venomous word from you, I will personally see to it you are escorted out of this castle. Is that clear?" Silence fell like a curtain. Sarah opened her mouth, shut it, then opened it again. Her eyes shone with a powerless rage Maya recognized. The look of someone who had always gotten what she wanted through manipulation, and was now learning her weapons no longer worked. "Perfectly clear, Your Majesty," she finally said, spitting the title like poison. Maya gave a single nod and walked away, heart pounding, chin high. Only when she was far enough, hidden in the shadows of a corridor, did she allow her hands to tremble. Night fell over Thornwald like a heavy cloak. Maya was back on the training grounds, but this time she was not alone. Yrsa sat on one of the stone stands, staff resting at her side, eyes fixed on the moon beginning to rise on the horizon. "The moon is almost full," the elder said as Maya approached. "In 2 weeks, it will be complete. Your power will be stronger then, but it will also be the moment of greatest danger." "Danger?" Maya sat beside her. You still have not fully learned to control what you are. Under the full moon, the power can be overwhelming. It can consume you if you do not learn to hold yourself together. Yrsa turned to face her. That is why I am here. To teach you before it is too late. Maya swallowed hard. Where do we start? With the moon. Yrsa pointed to the sky. Look at her. Do not just see her. Truly look, the way your wolf does. Maya closed her eyes, drew a deep breath, and called her wolf to the surface. Not a full shift, but enough to feel her presence. The ancient, wild awareness now living inside her. When she opened her eyes again, the world had changed. Colors were different. Sharper in some ranges, dimmer in others. But the moon was glorious. She shone with an intensity Maya had never seen before, as if she were alive, pulsing, calling. And then she heard it. Not words exactly. More like a feeling. A knowing seeping into her mind like water through stone. The moon was speaking, and somehow Maya understood. Grow, change, protect. What do you feel? Yrsa asked softly. She is telling me something, Maya whispered, unable to look away. About change. About protection. The moon speaks to all wolves, Yrsa said. But to guardians, she speaks more clearly. She will guide you when you are lost. Warn you when danger comes. Strengthen you when you need it. Maya finally managed to tear her gaze away, blinking to clear her vision. And the memories? You said I can access ancestral memories. Yes, but that is harder. It requires you to dive deep, to open yourself completely to the lineage you carry. Yrsa touched Maya's chest, over her heart. The memories are here, in the beating of your heart, in the blood running through your veins. You just have to learn to listen. Maya closed her eyes again, focusing on the sound of her own heartbeat. At first, that was all it was. Steady beats. The familiar sound of being alive. But then, slowly, she began to feel something more. Fragmented images started flashing through her mind. A dark forest under a full moon. A pack running in perfect formation. A silver-furred she-wolf staring at her across the centuries, eyes filled with ancient knowledge. And then a feeling. Strong. Urgent. Alarming. Danger. Betrayal. Blood on the borders. Maya's eyes flew open with a gasp, heart racing. What was it? Yrsa asked, already on alert. I saw something. Maya pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Danger. Coming from the borders. Not now, but soon? Yrsa studied her face for a long moment. Your territorial power, she said at last. It is waking faster than I expected. You are sensing threats to the kingdom. It is part of what it means to be a guardian. But how do I know if it is real and not just my imagination? Trust what you feel, Yrsa said firmly. Guardians do not have false visions. If you sense danger, then there is danger. It may be distant, it may be forming, but it is coming. Maya looked toward the castle, where lights glowed in the windows, where Kaelin was likely still in meetings, handling emissaries and council, bearing the weight of decisions that would affect thousands. She needed to tell him. But first, keep going, she said to Yrsa. Teach me everything you can. If danger is coming, I need to be ready. The elder smiled, a small smile, but full of approval. Meanwhile, hundreds of kilometers away, the tavern room was exactly what Cedric expected. Tiny, filthy, with a bed that had seen better days and a window that did not close properly. He barely noticed. He was too busy trying not to fall over while the woman, what was her name again, shoved him inside and slid the bolt on the door. Finally, he said, grinning as he leaned on the wall to keep from collapsing. I thought we would never get to the fun part. He winked at her. The woman, Kira, she had said as they climbed the stairs. though Cedric was fairly sure he would forget it again in 5 minutes, just stared at him with an expression caught between exasperation and something more complicated. "Sit," she ordered, pushing him toward the bed. "Ah, bossy," Cedric muttered, letting himself drop onto the mattress with all the grace of a sack of potatoes. "I like that." He stretched his arms out in what he thought was an inviting gesture. "Come on, then. Let's—" The sound of the bolt being thrown shut cut him off. Cedric frowned, confusion pushing through the alcoholic haze. "Why did you lock it?" Kira did not answer. Instead, she walked to the window, checked something outside, then turned back to him with a seriousness that sliced straight through his drunkenness. That strange electric current, that pull in his chest that made no sense. It was stronger now, almost painful in its intensity. What in the hells is happening? "You need to listen to me," Kira said, every trace of teasing gone from her voice. "And you need to listen while you are still conscious enough to understand, hopefully." Cedric blinked, trying to focus. "Listen to what? I thought we were going to—" "Shut up, Prince," she cut in, and there was something in her tone, real urgency, even fear, that finally seized all of his attention. "My name is Kira Ashenfell. I am captain of the guard of the Kingdom of Ashenfell to the north. I am here on a covert mission investigating a conspiracy against Thornwald." The alcohol fog began to burn away under the weight of her words. "Conspiracy," Cedric repeated slowly. 3 kingdoms, Valdris, Morwen, and Starin, formed a secret alliance. They plan to attack Thornwald in 2 weeks. Cedric's blood ran cold, sobriety slamming into him like cold water. "My brother. Your brother does not know." "No one does, except the conspirators and now me. And you." Kira stepped closer, dropping to one knee in front of him so their eyes were level. "They want to destabilize the kingdom. The Queen of Ancient Blood scares them. A strong king with a powerful mate scares them. So they plan to strike before they are fully united, before the Queen's powers are fully awakened, and the king grows even stronger." "Why tell me this?" Cedric asked, head spinning for reasons that had nothing to do with wine. "Why not ride straight to Thornwald?" "Because you are easier to find." Something flickered over her face, frustration maybe. "And because the men downstairs were sent to kill you, to eliminate the spare heir before the main attack, weaken the line of succession." Cedric felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with bad wine. "So you saved me." "For now." They stayed there, eyes locked, and Cedric felt that strange connection again. Stronger, nearly overwhelming. "What is this?" But before he could ask, the sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway froze them both. Kira rose in one fluid motion, hand going to the dagger at her belt. "They are coming," she whispered. "Who?" "The assassins, you idiot." She scanned the cramped room, calculating. "The window? Now? But you said—" The crash of something slamming against the door cut him off. Once, twice. On the 3rd hit, the door burst inward. 3 men stormed in, the same hooded ones Cedric had seen downstairs. Only now their cloaks were thrown back, revealing hard faces and drawn swords that flashed in the candlelight. "End of the line, Prince," one of them said, advancing. Kira did not hesitate. She moved like lightning, her dagger flashing from her hand and sinking into the first assassin's throat before he could take another step. He collapsed with a horrible wet gurgle, blood spraying. The other 2 struck at once. Cedric, still half drunk but with adrenaline finally scouring the fog from his mind, grabbed the only weapon within reach, the iron candlestick from the bedside table, and hurled it at the nearest assassin's head. He hit. The man staggered. Kira seized the opening, rolling under the second assassin's swing and slamming a brutal kick into the side of his knee. Bone cracked. The man screamed and dropped. The third, the one Cedric had nailed with the candlestick, regained his footing and lunged again, this time aiming straight for Cedric, who, weaponless and still unsteady, had just enough time to think, "I'm going to die drunk in a fifth-rate tavern." Then Kira was there. She caught the blow with her own sword. When had she drawn a sword? And, with a movement Cedric could only halfway follow, disarmed the assassin and slit his throat in a single smooth arc. Silence. 3 bodies on the floor. Kira panting, spattered in blood that was not hers, and Cedric staring at her as if he were seeing a ghost. Or a war goddess. "Window," she repeated, already moving. "Now." This time, Cedric obeyed. They crossed to the window, which opened onto a sloped roof, and beyond it, a narrow alley. Down below, Cedric spotted a horse tied up, likely Kira's. "Can you get down?" she asked. "I am drunk, not crippled." Kira shot him a skeptical look, but had no time to argue. Voices were already echoing in the hallway, more people coming to investigate the noise. "Go," she ordered. Cedric climbed onto the windowsill, cold night air slapping his face and finally wiping away the last traces of his drunkenness. He looked down. It was higher than it had seemed from inside. But 3 dead men lay behind him, and more might be on the way. He jumped. He hit the roof awkwardly, slid on the tiles, but managed to catch himself. A heartbeat later, Kira landed beside him with feline grace. "Run," she said, and they ran, across rooftops, down a trellis, dropping into the alley. Kira slicing through the horse's tether while Cedric tried not to vomit from the mix of exertion and alcohol. "Up," she ordered, already swinging into the saddle. "I have my own... no time. Up." Cedric obeyed, hauling himself up behind her. The moment his arms wrapped around her to hold on as she spurred the horse forward, that feeling hit again. Stronger than ever. As if every cell in his body were screaming that this was right, that this somehow made sense in a way nothing else in his life did. Kira drove the horse hard, and they thundered out of the village into the dark line of the forest. Behind them, shouts and lights multiplied. Ahead, there was nothing but night, stars, and the road leading back to the one place Cedric had sworn never to return. Home. They rode for hours. Kira kept a brutal pace until she was sure they were not being followed, then finally slowed, guiding the horse off the main road and beneath the cover of the trees. Cedric was completely sober now, and exhausted, and confused. "We need to stop," Kira said at last, dismounting. "The horse needs rest, and you look about to pass out." Cedric slid down with far less grace than he would have liked, legs shaky. "Where are we?" "Not far from the tavern." Kira began gathering kindling for a fire. "We camp here until dawn, then we keep going." "To Thornwald," Cedric said, mostly to himself. "To Thornwald," she confirmed. They worked in silence, Kira building the fire with military efficiency, Cedric sinking down onto a nearby rock, struggling to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. He had almost died. And there was a plot against his brother. "Why did you do it?" he asked finally. Kira did not look at him, focused on arranging the sticks. "Do what?" "Save me. You could have just gone on to Thornwald with the information. Let me die. It would have been easier." He pressed the point again. Silence stretched so long Cedric thought she would not answer. Then finally she spoke. "Because..." She stopped, shoulders tight. "Because you matter to the line of succession. Your kingdom needs you, even if you do not believe that." It was a lie. Cedric could feel it. He did not know how, but he could. There was another reason. "Kira," he said softly, the first time he used her name with real attention. "What are you not telling me?" She finally looked at him, and in the firelight Cedric saw the war in her eyes, the clash between what she wanted to say and what she knew she had to keep to herself. "Nothing," she said at last, looking away. "Lie down. Rest. We have a long road ahead tomorrow. But Cedric kept watching her as she walked over to check on the horse, and that strange feeling, that inexplicable connection, pulsed between them like something alive. What is happening here? He had no answer. And as he lay down on the cold forest floor, wrapped in Kira's cloak, because she had insisted, Cedric wondered if he was finally losing his mind. Or if maybe, for the first time in a long while, he was about to find something that actually made sense. Kira waited until she was sure he was asleep. Only then did she let out the breath she had been holding since the moment she saw the prince in that tavern. Mate. The word rang in her mind like a death knell, dragging with it a storm of emotions she was not ready to face. He was her mate, and he was too drunk to realize it. That drunk, pathetic, self-destructive prince was the person fate had chosen for her. The gods had a cruel sense of humor. Kira looked to where Cedric slept, snoring softly, still reeking of wine and self-loathing. His golden hair was dirty and tangled. Dark shadows bruised the skin beneath his eyes. He looked like a broken version of the prince she had once seen, years ago, when she visited Thornwald as a child with her father. And yet, when she touched him, when his arms wrapped around her on the horse, when his hands brushed hers while climbing to the room, her wolf had roared inside her with a recognition so fierce it hurt. This one. This is ours. Kira had spent 26 years waiting for a mate. She had imagined someone strong, noble, worthy, a warrior who could stand at her side in the battles she chose to fight. Not this. But the bond did not lie. And now she was trapped. Caught between duty to her kingdom, delivering word of the conspiracy, completing her mission, and the mate instinct screaming at her to protect him, save him, somehow mend the wreck he had become. Damn it, she whispered into the night. The horse nickered softly in reply. Kira walked over to the animal, stroking its neck, seeking comfort in the simple act of caring for something that made sense. I cannot tell him, she murmured. Not yet. Not like this. He can barely take care of himself. How could he handle this? But her wolf disagreed, wanted to claim, wanted him to know. Not yet, Kira repeated, more firmly this time, as if saying it out loud made it easier to resist the pull. She looked up at the sky, at the moon that was almost full. In 2 weeks, if her information was right, the kingdoms would strike. 2 weeks to reach Thornwald and the king. 2 weeks to figure out what to do with the fact that her mate was a broken prince who would probably hate her when he learned the truth. But first, she had to keep him alive. One thing at a time, Kira told herself, moving back toward the fire. She sat on the opposite side, far enough away that she could not accidentally touch him in her sleep, close enough to protect him if anything came. And as she watched the prince sleep, snoring, drooling a little, completely unaware of the chaos he caused simply by existing, Kira allowed herself, for a brief moment, to imagine. Imagine that he might change. Imagine that he might become the man she needed him to be. Imagine that, perhaps, fate knew something she did not. Then she pushed the thoughts away. She had no time for fantasies. She had a kingdom to save, and a mate to keep alive, whether he liked it or not. Chapter 3. The first thing Cedric noticed when he woke up was the silence. Not the artificial silence of taverns while they waited for him to lose consciousness completely, but the true silence of the forest, birds singing in the distance, leaves whispering in the breeze, the soft crackle of dying embers from a campfire. The second thing he noticed was that his head was not pounding. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Cedric woke without the familiar hangover hammering behind his eyes, without his mouth dry as sand, without his stomach churning threateningly. He was sober. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the light filtering through the treetops. He was lying on the forest floor, covered by a cloak that was not his. Every muscle in his body ached, reminders of a night that returned in shattered flashes. A tavern, assassins, a fight, blood, and a woman. Cedric sat up sharply, ignoring the dizziness the movement caused, and looked for her. She was there, on the other side of the nearly dead fire, sitting on a rock with her back perfectly straight, sharpening a dagger with methodical movements. Her hair was tied back in a braid, exposing the strong line of her jaw and the thin scar above her eyebrow. She wore the same clothes as the night before, leather trousers, travel tunic, but had removed her cloak, and Cedric could see the defined muscles in her arms as she worked. Warrior. The word came back to him, along with fragments of memory. She had said something about that, about being from Ashenfell, about a mission, about assassins wanting to kill him, and she had saved him. Kira. That was her name. Kira Ashenfell. As if she could feel the weight of his gaze, she lifted her eyes from the dagger. "You are awake," she said, voice neutral. "I thought you would sleep until midday." "What time is it?" Cedric asked, his own voice coming out rough. "Shortly after dawn." She turned her attention back to the dagger. "You slept for 6 hours, more than I expected considering. Considering I almost died? Considering you were drunk enough to knock a horse over." Cedric could not argue with that. He stood slowly, testing his legs, and walked over to where she was. The movement dragged up more memories. The escape across the rooftops, the desperate ride, the smell of blood and fear, and something else. Something he could not quite pin down through the haze still covering parts of the previous night. "Thank you," he said, stopping a few steps from her, "for saving me. You did not have to." "I did." The interruption was firm. "You are important. Your kingdom needs you." "My kingdom has my brother." "You are the heir." Kira finally stopped sharpening the dagger, sliding it back into the sheath at her belt. "Your death would weaken the line of succession, make everything easier for those who want to see Thornwald fall." Cedric frowned, working through her words with the painful clarity of sobriety. "You mentioned that yesterday. About a conspiracy. About—" He broke off, because it was then, right then, as she stood and the morning light hit her just so, that it happened. The scent hit him first. It was nothing he could describe with human words. Not perfume or soap or anything that ordinary. It was her essence. Leather and steel and something deeper, something wild and old that made every hair on his body stand on end. And then his wolf woke. With a roar so fierce, so overwhelming, that Cedric almost fell to his knees under the force of it. Mate. The word exploded in his mind like thunder, reverberating through every cell, every bone, every beat of his heart. No. No, no, no. Cedric stumbled back a step, breath caught in his throat, eyes wide as he stared at Kira as if seeing her for the first time. And in a way, he was. Because now he could see the golden shimmer around her that marked a true mate. He could feel the pull in his chest urging him to move closer, to touch, to claim. He could hear his own heart beating in sync with hers, as if they were a single organ split between two bodies. Mate. She was his mate. "No," he whispered, voice cracking. "This cannot be happening." Something flickered over Kira's face, a flash of emotion she quickly hid behind a mask of neutrality. "You finally realized," she said. And it was not a question. "You knew." The accusation came out sharper than Cedric intended. "Since when?" "Since I saw you in that tavern. And you said nothing. You were too drunk to understand." Kira crossed her arms, posture defensive. "And even sober, what would have changed? You would still be a fallen prince drowning in self-pity. I would still be a warrior on a mission. The mate bond does not change those things." "It does not?" Cedric gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "It changes everything." He stepped toward her, and Kira did not back away. They stood there, only a few inches apart, and Cedric could feel the heat radiating off her, could see the quick pulse in her throat, could feel the mate bond pulling tight between them like a rope stretched to its limit. "You are mine," he said, voice low and rough. My mate. That means... It means fate has a cruel sense of humor. Kira cut in, but there was a crack in her voice that betrayed the emotion she tried to hide. Do you think I wanted this? That I wanted to find my mate and discover he is a drunk prince who gave up on everything? The words cut like blades, but Cedric knew he deserved every one of them. I can change, he said, and for the first time in months, he truly believed it. I will change. For you. To be worthy of... Stop. Kira raised a hand between them, creating a physical barrier. Do not make promises you do not know if you can keep. But you are my mate. That means nothing yet. The steel in her voice was absolute. The mate bond does not magically make you a better man, Cedric. It does not erase the choices you made. It does not fix what is broken. Cedric felt something tighten in his chest. Not the sting of rejection, but something worse. The shame of knowing she was exactly right. So what do we do? He asked, his voice more vulnerable than he meant it to be. Kira studied him for a long moment, and Cedric could see the war in her eyes. The battle between what the mate bond urged her to do and what her logic, her experience, her pride, told her she should do. We go to Thornwald, she said at last. You warn your brother about the danger. You fulfill your responsibilities as prince. You prove you can be more than the drunken coward I found in that tavern. And after? After. She hesitated, and for the first time since he woke, Cedric saw something like hope in her eyes. After, we see if you are worthy of what fate handed you. Cedric nodded slowly, taking it in. And then, because he was who he was, because even sober, even ashamed, he was still the prince who had spent years learning how to take what he wanted. He leaned forward. Can I at least... His intention was clear. He wanted to kiss her. To feel her lips on his, to confirm the bond in the oldest, most primal way he knew. But Kira's hand found his mouth before he could close the distance. Not like this, she said, voice firm but not cruel. Her fingers were warm against his lips, and Cedric could feel the faint tremor in them. Who do you think I am? Some tavern girl you can charm with a smile and a few pretty words. She stepped back, putting space between them. Do better, Prince, she said, and there was a challenge in her eyes that made Cedric's heart race. Become the man who deserves to kiss his mate. Then maybe. And with that, she turned and began gathering her things, clearly signaling the conversation was over. Cedric stayed where he was, hand still half raised where she had been seconds before, the taste of rejection bitter in his mouth. But beneath the frustration, beneath the shame, there was something else. Determination. The journey to Thornwald would take 7 days. 7 days riding through forests and villages, avoiding main roads where spies might be watching, sleeping in rough camps, and eating whatever they could hunt or buy in discreet taverns. 7 days that became a strange form of torture for Cedric, because Kira was there, always there. Riding beside him during the day, sitting on the far side of the fire at night, close enough that he could feel her warmth, her scent, the constant pull of the mate bond that never, not for a single second, let him forget what she was. His. Except she was not. Not yet. Maybe never. And it was slowly driving him mad. You are staring again, Kira said on the 3rd day, without taking her eyes off the road ahead. I am not, Cedric lied. You are. You do it every 5 minutes. She finally glanced at him, one eyebrow raised. It is unsettling. I am biologically programmed to look at you. You are biologically programmed to breathe, but you manage that without looking like an idiot. Cedric could not help the smile tugging at his mouth. Do you know you are funny? In a cruel and devastating way, but funny. And do you know you are annoying? In a completely not funny and only annoying way. But there was the faintest hint of a smile on her lips as she said it, and Cedric counted it as a victory. The days fell into a strange pattern of tension and growing familiarity. Cedric learned bits and pieces about her, that she had trained with the Guard since she was 12, that her father was a general in Ashenfell, that she preferred the sword over the dagger, but was lethal with both, that she had a scar on her shoulder from a battle that had almost killed her at 19. And Kira reluctantly started to glimpse fragments of the man he had been before he drowned himself in wine and self-pity. "You were different," she said on the 5th night, as they ate roasted rabbit she had hunted. "Before. I saw you once years ago when I visited Thornwald with my father. You were on the training grounds." Cedric looked up, surprised. "You saw me?" "Everyone saw you. You were luminous. Like the sun existed just to make your hair shine." She grimaced. It was irritating. "Luminous," Cedric repeated, testing the word. "I do not feel very luminous right now." "No, right now you are more like partly cloudy." He laughed, a real laugh, not the bitter, self-mocking sound he had grown used to. "Partly cloudy. I will take that as progress." "You should." Kira took another bite. "At least you are not a full-on storm anymore." And so the days went. Small conversations, sharp humor, and the ever-present tension of the mate bond pulling between them like a rope. Neither of them knew whether to cut or embrace. On the 6th night, Cedric tried again. They were sitting by the fire, closer than usual because the night was cold. Kira was checking her arrows, making sure they were in good condition, when Cedric just tried. He leaned in, slowly enough that she could pull away if she wanted to, bringing his face closer to hers. Her hand landed on his chest before he could get close. "No," she said, though her voice was less steady than before. "Why not?" Cedric asked, not retreating completely. "I am getting better. You said I am partly cloudy now." "Partly cloudy still has clouds." "Everyone has clouds, Kira." She pushed him back gently, creating space. "Not like this," she repeated, and Cedric could see the struggle in her eyes. "Not because you want to prove something. Not because the bond is shoving you at me. When it happens, it will be because we both choose it. Not because fate decided for us." Cedric drew back, frustrated but understanding. "I have never worked this hard just to kiss a woman," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Kira let out a short laugh. "Good. Maybe a little suffering will build character. I have character. You have the potential for character. There is a difference." Cedric shook his head, but he was smiling. And on the morning of the 7th day, when Thornwald's towers finally appeared on the horizon, he realized something. For 7 whole days, he had not touched a drop of alcohol. Not for lack of opportunity. They had passed more than enough taverns. But every time temptation rose, he looked at Kira and remembered. "Do better, Prince." And he was. Slowly. Painfully. But he was. "Ready?" Kira asked, pulling her horse up beside his as they stared at the distant castle. No. Cedric was not ready. He was not ready to face Kaelin. Not ready to see Maya. Not ready for the shame of returning after running away like a coward. But Kira was beside him. And there was a conspiracy that could destroy his kingdom. And for the first time in months, Cedric had something worth fighting for. "No," he admitted, "but we are going anyway." And together, they urged their horses toward the castle of Thornwald. The guards on the walls spotted the riders. "2 riders approaching," the shout echoed across the courtyard. "One of them, Your Majesty, it looks like Prince Cedric." Kaelin was on the training grounds with Maya when the news reached him. They froze, looking at each other. "Cedric," Maya whispered. "Impossible," Kaelin said, but he was already running toward the gates. Maya followed, heart pounding out of rhythm. Cedric, after 2 months, coming back. They reached the gates just as they swung open. And there, astride a road-stained horse, was Cedric. He looked different, thinner, more worn. His golden hair was longer, messier. Dark circles sank under his eyes, and a rough beard shadowed his jaw. And beside him, on another horse, was a woman Maya had never seen before. Hair in a braid, practical travel clothes, sharp eyes that swept the courtyard with military precision. Cedric dismounted slowly, as if every movement hurt. And when his gaze met Kaelin's, Maya saw something there that surprised her. Shame, regret, and determination. "Brother," Cedric said, voice hoarse. "I know I do not deserve an audience. I know I have no right to be here after what I did. But—" He glanced at the woman beside him, and something passed between them. Silent but intense. "But there is something you need to know. Something that could destroy Thornwald if we do not act quickly." Kaelin studied his brother for a long moment. The courtyard was silent. Guards watched. Servants had stopped working. Everyone waited for the king's reaction. And then Kaelin moved. Not with anger. Not with calculated coldness. He simply crossed the space between them and pulled Cedric into a hug. Cedric froze, clearly not expecting that. His arms stayed rigid at his sides for a heartbeat, too, before finally rising to return the embrace with desperate strength. "You came back," Kaelin murmured, low enough that only Cedric heard. "That is what matters now." When they stepped apart, both men's eyes were a little too bright. Kaelin cleared his throat, reclaiming his king's composure. "Come," he said, voice steady again. "Let us hear what you have to say." Chapter 4. The council chamber was in absolute silence. Kaelin sat at the head of the long oak table, Maya at his right. Cedric occupied a chair farther down, still looking out of place, as if he were not sure he deserved to be there. And standing, with a stack of documents and maps laid out in front of her, was the woman who had arrived with him. Kira Ashenfell. 5 senior counselors completed the circle, older men who had served Thornwald for decades, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. "So," Kaelin said, breaking the silence, "you may begin." Kira simply turned, and her eyes found Maya's. "My queen," she said, and there was a weight in her voice that made Maya straighten in her chair. "I am here because of you." Maya blinked, confused. "Because of me?" "Yes." Kira picked up one of the documents. "My name is Kira, daughter of General Theron, commander of the forces of the Northern Kingdom. My father serves King Aldrich, who was an ally of your parents." Maya's heart kicked hard. My parents. My father and King Aldrich honored them deeply. Kira leaned forward. "When your parents died fulfilling their duty as guardians, King Aldrich made a vow. He swore that if anything ever happened to them, the North would protect their daughter. Always." Maya felt tears burn, but she held them back. I did not know." "You were not meant to. It was a secret vow, known only to a few. Your father trusted King Aldrich, and he trusted my father." Kira spread the maps across the table. "When the rumors began to spread, that you had been claimed by the King of Thornwald, that your ancient blood had awakened, that other kingdoms were afraid of your power, King Aldrich knew you would be in danger." Kaelin leaned forward. "What kind of danger?" "The kind that comes with armies." Kira pointed to the maps. 3 kingdoms, Valdris, Morwen, and Sterin, formed a secret alliance. They planned to attack Thornwald during the next full moon. The silence that followed was deafening. "Impossible," one of the counselors muttered. 3 kingdoms? That would be a declaration of continental war." "Exactly." Kira laid more papers on the table, intercepted letters, royal seals still visible. "They do not call it war. They call it preventive containment. Their argument is that a queen of ancient blood at the side of a powerful king creates a dangerous imbalance of power. That Thornwald will become too dominant, that it is better to act now, before it is too late." "Lies," Kaelin said, his voice hard as stone. "That is fear dressed up as strategy." "Yes, but weaponized fear is dangerous. Kira pointed to marks on the maps. They have roughly 15,000 wolf shifters and human soldiers positioned in 3 points in the border forests. They plan to strike all at once. Maya stared at the maps, her stomach twisting. How did you find all this out? King Aldrich moved early. As soon as he heard the rumors about you, he ordered a covert investigation. Kira looked at Cedric for a moment. Something passed between them, quick but intense. My father sent me because one woman traveling alone attracts less suspicion than a battalion. My mission was to investigate, confirm the conspiracy, and come to you with proof in enough time for you to prepare. And my brother? Kaelin asked, looking at Cedric. How did he end up involved in this? Cedric finally spoke, his voice rough. Luck. Or bad luck, depending on how you see it. He ran a hand through his hair. I was drowning myself in wine at a border tavern when assassins from Valdris came to kill me. Kira saved me. Then she explained everything, and brought me back. Kaelin studied his brother. You are sober. I am. Cedric met his gaze. And I am going to stay that way. Something passed between the brothers. A silent exchange that Maya recognized. Forgiveness. Not complete yet, but beginning. So, one of the counselors said, breaking the moment, what do we do? Mobilize our forces? Prepare a defense? Not just that, Kira said. King Aldrich and my father are already mobilizing troops. They are gathering allies, readying reinforcements. But that takes time. And the full moon is coming. Kaelin drummed his fingers on the table, thinking. We have 1 week to prepare a defense against 3 armies. Or, Maya said, surprising even herself by speaking. 1 week to stop a war entirely. Everyone looked at her. How? Kaelin asked. Maya drew a steadying breath. They are afraid of my power, afraid of what they do not understand. So we show them. Not with threats, but with controlled strength. We offer peace, but make it very clear that attacking Thornwald would be unwise. A slow smile curved Kaelin's lips. Diplomacy backed by power. Exactly. I like it, Kira said. My king would too. He has always preferred to avoid bloodshed when possible. Kaelin nodded, the decision clearly taking shape. Then that is what we will do. The meeting went on for another 2 hours. Yrsa was summoned and, together with Maya, performed an ancient ritual, a territorial connection that allowed Maya to feel exactly where the enemy troops were positioned. She closed her eyes, let her power flow through the land, and saw through the moon's own perception. 3 encampments. Hidden in the forests, exactly where Kira had said. 15,000 men and 200 wolves, Maya whispered when she came back to herself, her eyes still glowing with residual power. Maybe more. Some are still arriving. The counselors stared at her with a mix of awe and fear. The final decision was made. They would depart at dawn. Kaelin, Maya, Cedric, Kira, and 50 elite warriors. They would ride for 3 days to the neutral border between the territories and confront the 3 kings directly. They would offer peace, but they would display strength. Before the meeting ended, Kira rose. With your permission, Your Majesty, I need to send a message to my father. Kaelin nodded. Kira slipped out briefly and returned minutes later, wiping ink from her fingers. It is done. The raven has flown. And your father? Kaelin asked. He will be there. Kira's voice was firm, confident. With our troops and the allies, King Aldrich has already rallied. They will position themselves near the neutral border. When we arrive, we will not be alone. Maya felt relief flood her chest. Going with only 50 warriors to face 15,000 had always felt reckless, at best. How many? One of the counselors asked. Enough to balance the scales, Kira replied. The North does not forget its oaths. And my father would never break the promise made to the Queen's parents. Kaelin exchanged a look with Maya, then nodded, Then it is settled. We leave at first light. That night, while the castle prepared for departure, Cedric found Kira in the stables. She was checking the saddles, making sure everything was ready for the journey. She did not look up when he approached, but he knew she had felt him. "Thank you," he said. "For everything. For saving me. For bringing the information. For not giving up on me." Kira stopped what she was doing, but still did not look at him. "I did not do it for you. I did it for my queen." Liar. That made her look up, gray eyes locking onto his. "Careful, Prince. I can still leave you for the assassins next time." "You will not." Cedric stepped closer. "Because you feel this as much as I do. The mate bond does not only pull one way." Her jaw tightened. "The mate bond means nothing if you are not worthy of it." "I am trying to be." Another step. They were only inches apart now. "I am sober. I am here. I am fighting for my kingdom. What else do I have to prove?" Kira studied him for a long moment. "Finish what you started," she said at last. "Face these kings. Help save Thornwald. Show me that the boy I saw on the training grounds years ago is still there. Then what?" She almost smiled. "Then maybe I will let you kiss me." Cedric laughed. A low, frustrated sound. "You are killing me. You know that? Good. A little suffering. You deserve it." He leaned in, slowly enough that she could pull back if she wanted. And this time, she did not retreat immediately. She stayed where she was, eyes on his, breathing quickening, close enough that he could count every eyelash. "After the battle," she whispered, "if you survive." "Is that a promise?" "It is motivation." And then she put her hand on his chest and gently pushed him back. "Now go. Rest. Tomorrow the hard part begins." Cedric stepped away, smiling despite the frustration. "You are cruel." Kira smiled. "Good night, Prince." "Good night, my mate." She did not answer, but Cedric saw the tremor in her hands as she went back to work. A small victory, but a victory. In the royal chamber, Kaelin watched Maya getting ready for bed. She was too quiet. Since the ritual, since seeing the troops through her power, there was something different about her. "Are you afraid?" he asked. Maya stopped, then turned to face him. "I am terrified." The raw honesty in her voice made Kaelin's heart twist. "So am I," he admitted. "You?" Maya let out a humorless laugh. "You are the king. You are not afraid of anything." "I am afraid of losing you." Kaelin crossed the room and stopped in front of her. "I am afraid that my decision to make you queen, to put you in the spotlight like this, is putting you in danger you never asked for." "It was my decision too." Maya placed her hand on his face. "And I am not backing down. Not now. Not when my kingdom needs me." "Our kingdom." "Our kingdom," she corrected with a small smile. Kaelin pulled her into a hug, not sexual, not possessive, just necessary. She melted against him, and they stayed like that for a long moment, simply breathing together. "We come back together," Maya whispered against his chest. "Or we do not come back at all." "No," Kaelin said, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes. "We come back together. There is no other option." And when he kissed her, slow and deep, Maya felt the mate bond pulse between them. Not just emotion, but power. Her ancient power resonating with his alpha strength, creating something greater than the sum of their parts. Together they were unstoppable. They had to be. Because in 3 days, they would stand before 3 kings and 3 armies. And the fate of Thornwald would hinge on what happened in that confrontation. Dawn broke cold and clear. The delegation gathered in the courtyard, 50 of the best wolf warriors mounted, armed, ready. The rest of the royal guard was being deployed to other strategic points to lock down the territory if needed, in case the fight came to them. Kaelin and Maya at the front, Cedric and Kira right behind. The people of Thornwald filled the courtyard to watch them leave. Some waved. Others prayed to the moon goddess for protection. Everyone knew something big was happening. Kaelin raised his hand, and the gates swung open. "For Thornwald," he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "For Thornwald." The answer thundered back from 50 throats, and they rode out. Chapter 5. 3 days of riding brought them to the neutral border. The field stretched wide and open, land that belonged to no specific kingdom, kept free by ancient agreements for moments exactly like this. Negotiations, treaties, or, if necessary, war. Maya felt the place before she saw it. Her territorial power pulsed here with an uncomfortable strangeness, as if the land did not know whom to answer to. There were no deep roots of loyalty, no ancient memory of protection. It was neutral ground in every sense of the word. "There," Kaelin said, pointing toward the northern horizon. Maya followed his gaze and felt relief flood her chest. Banners, hundreds of them fluttering in the wind. The Silver Wolf of Ashenfell dominated, but there were other crests as well, smaller northern kingdoms that had answered King Aldrich's call. And soldiers, thousands of them. Wolf warriors and men standing in perfect formation, armor gleaming under the afternoon sun, spears raised like a forest of steel. They were not just guards. They were an army. They rode toward the northern camp, and Maya saw the exact moment they were spotted. A shout echoed along the lines, and suddenly there was movement. Soldiers shifting, officers running, and then a figure emerging from the main tent. He was enormous. General Theron was as large as Kaelin, with shoulders broad enough to carry the world. His hair was dark, streaked with silver at the temples, his well-trimmed beard framing a face that had seen 1,000 battles and survived them all. There was kindness there, and honor. "Majesties of Thornwald," he said, bowing with the kind of respect that came from genuine admiration, not just protocol. "It is an honor to finally meet you." Kaelin dismounted, helping Maya down before extending his hand to the general. "The honor is ours, General Theron. Your daughter saved my brother, and brought information that may have saved our kingdom." My daughter," Theron said, and there was deep pride in his voice as he looked at Kira, who had also dismounted, "has always been exceptional, even when it cost me sleep." Kira rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "Father. Daughter." He pulled her into a hug that lifted her off the ground for a moment, and Maya saw the genuine affection between them. When he let her go, his eyes shifted to Cedric, who stood nearby looking slightly uncomfortable. "And this," Theron said, one eyebrow rising, "must be the prince my daughter mentioned in her letters." Kira flushed. "I did not." "The prince needs constant supervision, Father," Theron quoted, his eyes gleaming with barely disguised humor. "He is improving, but still requires close watch." "Shall I go on?" "Please do not," Kira muttered. Cedric stepped forward and held out his hand. "Prince Cedric of Thornwald, General, and your daughter is right. I did need supervision. I probably still do. But I am trying to be worthy of her keeping an eye on me." Theron studied the prince for a long moment, then smiled, a smile that completely transformed his stern face. "Honesty. I like that." He gripped Cedric's hand hard enough to make him stagger slightly. "Welcome, Prince. My daughter does not waste time on fools, so you must have some value, even if you do not see it yet." "Father," Kira repeated, but there was affection in her exasperation. "And the Queen." Theron turned to Maya, and something in his expression changed. It softened, grew sadder. "Maya, daughter of Elena and Darius, you have your mother's eyes, and they say your father's heart." Maya's throat tightened. "I fought beside your father in 3 campaigns along the northern borders. He saved my life twice. Your mother? Well, she terrified even the most seasoned warriors when she shifted." Theron smiled at the memory. "They were legendary, Your Majesty. And they would be immensely proud of you." The tears came before Maya could stop them. Kaelin pulled her closer, an arm around her waist, and she leaned into him, grateful. "Thank you," she managed, "for honoring the promise made to them. For coming." "Always," Theron said simply. "Now come. King Aldrich is eager to meet you, and we have strategies to discuss. Our spies report that all 3 kingdoms arrive at dawn tomorrow." The war tent was large enough to hold 30 people comfortably. Maps covered the central table, detailed, updated, showing every troop movement from the past few weeks. King Aldrich of Ashenfell was older than Theron, but no less imposing. He wore a simple crown of black iron, and his eyes, blue as ice, studied everything with the precision of a man who had ruled for 40 years and intended to rule for 40 more. "King Kaelin," he said, bowing slightly. "Queen Maya, it is a pleasure to finally meet the rulers of Thornwald. Your central kingdom has always been crucial to the balance of power on this continent." "Central Kingdom," Kaelin agreed, picking up the thread. "We border 6 different realms, including Ashenfell to the north. Our strategic position is both our strength and a constant target." "Which is exactly why," Aldrich said, pointing to the map. "These 3, Valdris to the west, Morwen to the south, Sterin to the east, decided it was time to move. You represent consolidated power at the heart of the continent, a queen of ancient blood, a strong alpha king, and now, alliance with the north." He smiled thinly. "That terrifies them." "Good," Maya said, and there was a ferocity in her voice that made several of the generals present look at her with open approval. "They should be afraid." "But," Kaelin added, ever the strategist, "we prefer peace, if we can have it." "We do," Aldrich agreed, "but not at any cost. Tomorrow, when they arrive, they will see what they are up against. 2 equal forces. A war here would not end quickly. It would be mutual ruin, enough blood to stain this field for generations. And they will understand that," Theron added, "when they see they are not facing a weakened, frightened kingdom, but 2 united, prepared realms, equally ready to send them home in pieces. The question," one of the northern generals said, "is whether they will be wise enough to back down." "They will," Kira said, speaking for the first time since entering the tent. Everyone looked at her. Because when they see Queen Maya demonstrate her power, when they realize it is not exaggeration or rumor but absolute reality, the fear that brought them here will be the same fear that sends them back. Dawn came wrapped in fog. Maya stood outside her tent, watching the sun slowly rise and burn away the mist, when she felt it. They were coming. She did not need scouts or lookouts to know. Her territorial power screamed the warning, even here on neutral ground. 3 armies approaching, 3 sovereigns marching toward possible death. Maya felt ready. Whole. Ursa's teaching still echoed in her mind, as if the Elder were there, guiding her every step. When Kaelin stepped out of the tent minutes later, he found her already dressed in the black leather armor Theron had provided. Practical, flexible, but clearly marked with Thornwald's silver wolf at her chest. Her hair was braided back, revealing the strong line of her face, and there was something in her eyes that made his heart leap. She looked like a warrior queen. "They are coming," she said. "I know." Kaelin wore his own armor, black and silver, the Thornwald crown replaced by a simple metal circlet that would not be a problem if he had to fight. The 3 armies arrived exactly as the sun finished its climb. From the west, the red and gold banners of Valdris. From the south, the green standards of Morwen. From the east, the white and blue of Sterin. 15,000 soldiers each, marching in perfect formation, the sound of their boots on the ground like distant thunder. And at the head of each army, their ruler. King Alaric of Valdris rode a black stallion, his armor decorated with enough gold to buy a village. He was young, perhaps 30, and arrogance sat in every line of his body. A king who had inherited power, and believed that made him untouchable. King Dorian of Morwen was older, calculating, mounted on a white horse with the rigid posture of a man who saw everything as a chessboard. His eyes swept the field constantly, counting, assessing, planning. Queen Elara of Sterin was the only woman among the 3 enemy leaders, and perhaps the most dangerous. She wore silver armor that shone like ice beneath the sun, her blonde hair woven into an elaborate crown braid, and there was absolute coldness in her blue eyes, a ruler who made hard choices without hesitation. The 3 halted their armies 100 meters from the northern camp. Then, together, they rode forward. Only the 3 of them, with 2 guards each, moving toward the center of the field where Kaelin, Maya, Aldrich, Theron, Cedric, and Kira waited. The wind swept across the empty space between them, carrying the scent of earth, steel, and tension. "King Kaelin of Thornwald," Alaric said, his voice carrying across the silence. "We come in peace." "Peace," Kaelin repeated, and there was something sharp in his tone. "With 15,000 soldiers." "Necessary precautions," Dorian said smoothly, his eyes already shifting to Maya. "Given the unstable power you harbor." "Unstable," Maya said, stepping forward. All 3 rulers fixed on her immediately, and she saw the exact moment they recognized what she was. Fear flashed in their eyes before they could hide it. Interesting choice of words for someone who has never seen me shift. "We have heard stories," Elara said, her voice cold and controlled. "Ancient blood. Power not seen for centuries. You can understand our concern." "Concern," Aldrich cut in, his voice like thunder, "is a polite word for irrational fear that drove you to form a secret alliance and plan the invasion of a sovereign kingdom." Alaric's jaw tightened. "We invaded no one. We are here to negotiate." "With armies," Theron said dryly. "Fascinating negotiations." The silence that followed was tight enough to snap. Then Dorian spoke, and there was almost honesty in his tone. "Look at it from our side. A powerful king at the center of the continent. A queen with a bloodline that should be extinct. And now, alliance with the North." His gaze met Kaelin's. "You are consolidating too much power, too quickly. It shifts the balance. It makes us vulnerable." "So this is about power," Kaelin said. "Not about safety. About control. About survival," Elara corrected. "Kingdoms fall when one becomes too dominant." "And kingdoms fall," Maya said, her voice cutting, "when they attack out of fear instead of seeking understanding. When they see enemies where they could have had allies." "Allies," Alaric almost spat the word. "How can we trust a queen whose power even you do not fully understand?" "You want to understand?" Maya asked. And before anyone could answer, she shifted. It was not like the other times. It was not the awkward change of someone still learning, nor the gradual process she practiced during training. It was instantaneous. One heartbeat, Maya stood there in human form. In the next, she was a wolf, and the 3 rulers physically drew their horses back. Because she was massive, bigger than any wolf they had ever seen, larger than the strongest alphas. Her black fur shone under the sun as if it had been polished, and when she moved, muscles rolled beneath her skin with raw, ancient power. But it was when she raised her head and they saw her eyes that true terror settled. Because it was not just size. It was presence. Power poured off her in visible waves, making the ground under her paws tremble faintly. It was the sense of standing before something primordial, something that had existed before kingdoms were dreamed of, before crowns were forged. It was the weight of centuries of guardians before her, their memories, their strength, flowing through Maya and manifesting in this single moment. The soldiers on both sides felt it. 15,000 men in the enemy armies recoiled instinctively, hands going to weapons even though they knew it would do no good. Even some of the northern soldiers, seasoned warriors who had seen 1,000 battles, swallowed hard and shifted nervously. And then Maya did something no one expected. She did not roar. She did not threaten. She did not display aggression. She simply let them feel. Her territorial power expanded, not violently, but like a soft, inexorable tide. She brushed against the mind of every person on that field. Let them feel her connection to the land, to the moon, to the very essence of what it meant to be a guardian. And with that connection came understanding. She was not a weapon to be contained. She was a protector to be respected. The difference was everything. When Maya shifted back, as quickly as she had changed, and stood there again in human form, wearing the armor Kira had quietly wrapped around her during the shift, the three rulers were pale. "You asked to understand," Maya said, her voice calm, but carrying easily through the absolute silence. "Now you do. My power is not meant to conquer. It is meant to protect. I do not attack. I defend. And as long as Thornwald is not threatened, you have nothing to fear from me." She took one step forward. "But if you come against my kingdom, my people, my family," her eyes flashed silver again, "then you will see just how unstable I can be." The silence was absolute. Cedric was the one who finally broke it. He stepped forward, and there was something different about him. Not the fallen prince who had left Thornwald months ago, but the man he was becoming, worthy. "I grew up beside that power," he said, his voice clear and steady. "Not in this form, but I watched Maya grow from rejected soldier to the queen standing in front of you. I know exactly what she can do, and I also know what she will not do." He looked straight at Alaric. "She will not seek war. She will not invade your lands. She will not use her power to oppress. Because unlike some," his gaze slid over the three rulers, "she understands that true power is not about threatening. It is about protecting." Kira stepped forward to stand beside Cedric. "And I," she said, "speak for Ashenfell and the North. My king sent me with a clear message. To attack Thornwald is to attack our ally. And the North does not forget its oaths. You will not face one kingdom, but two. Far more than 15,000 warriors who will not hesitate to defend their homes." She opened one of the documents she had brought. Detailed maps, intercepted letters. "Furthermore," she went on, her voice razor sharp, "we have full evidence of your conspiracy. Letters between your counselors, attack plans, secret agreements that violate 3 different non-aggression treaties." Dorian went pale. "That is true," Kira cut in. "And if this war happens, that evidence goes to every other kingdom on the continent. They will see that you not only planned to attack Thornwald, but conspired in secret, broke treaties, and tried to destabilize the balance of power through unprovoked aggression. You will become pariahs," Theron added. "No kingdom will trust you again. No alliance will take you in. And when other problems arise, and they always do, you will face them alone." Alara looked at the faces around her. Kaelin firm and unyielding, Maya still glowing with residual power, Aldrich and Theron flanking them like immovable mountains, Cedric and Kira presenting evidence that condemned them. Then she looked back at her own armies and did the math. A queen who could make the earth itself tremble. A northern king whose military reputation was legendary, and evidence that would destroy their political standing even if they somehow won militarily. The risk was too high, the gain far too small. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "we misread the situation." Alaric stared at her as if she had betrayed him. "Ilara." "No," she cut him off, still focused on Kaelin. "We came out of fear. Fear of the unknown. But Queen Maya has shown us what she is, and I do not see a threat." "I see." She hesitated, searching for the right word. Protection, just as she said. Dorian was running his own calculations, Maya could tell. His eyes never stopped moving, counting soldiers, gauging distances, projecting outcomes. "A war here," he said at last, "would cost us our armies. Even if we won, we would return too weakened to defend our own borders from other threats. Then we propose, Kaelin said, seizing the opening. An alternative. A formal non-aggression treaty. Thornwald promises not to use our queen's power offensively. You promise to respect our borders. The North joins as a signatory, guaranteeing we all hold to our word. And my evidence, Kira added, stays secret. No one needs to know that this misinterpretation almost started a war. Alaric was the one who resisted the longest. And if Thornwald becomes aggressive in the future? If you consolidate too much power? Then, Aldrich said, his voice like steel, all of us, including the North, will respond. But that will be a collective decision based on actual actions, not speculative fear. The silence stretched. Maya could feel the weight of the moment. Decades of the future balanced on a decision that would be made in the next few seconds. Finally, Ilara dismounted. She walked to where Kaelin stood and held out her hand. I accept the terms. Sterin will sign the treaty. Dorian hesitated only a heartbeat before joining her. Morwen as well. All eyes turned to Alaric. The young king was flushed with contained rage, but even he could see he was alone. His allies had stepped back. To push forward would mean fighting two wars. One here, and a political one later. Valdris, he said through gritted teeth, will sign. The treaty was drafted and signed before sunset. 3 copies, each sealed with the crests of all the kingdoms involved. Thornwald, Ashenfell, Valdris, Morwen, and Sterin, bound together in a promise of peace. The enemy armies began to withdraw as soon as the ink dried, marching back to their lands with the same efficiency with which they had come. But there was a difference now. They did not march away in defeat. They marched away in reluctant respect. Because they had come fearing a monster and had found a queen. As the last banners disappeared on the horizon, Kaelin pulled Maya closer. You were perfect, he murmured into her hair. We were perfect, she corrected. All of us. The celebration in the northern camp that night was measured. Not a victory of war, but a victory of peace. And that called for a different kind of recognition. But it was during the evening meal, while everyone gathered in the main tent, that it happened. Cedric sat beside Kira, their hands finding each other beneath the table in a way they thought no one noticed. He had been sober for weeks now, had helped prevent a war, had proven his worth. And every second beside her, without being able to fully claim her, was slowly killing him. You are staring again, Kira muttered, without looking at him. I always stare. Disturbing. Inevitable. Cedric squeezed her hand. When do I get to stop proving myself? When I say so. Kira! But Theron interrupted, his voice rumbling through the tent. Kira! A word. Now. The tent fell silent. Kira rose, following her father outside. Cedric waited exactly 10 seconds before slipping after them, unable to help himself. Outside, beneath the stars, Theron looked at his daughter with an expression Cedric could not read. You are going to tell me? He asked. Or should I guess? Kira blinked. Tell you what? That the prince is your mate. Cedric froze where he stood, hidden behind a nearby tent. Kira went pale. How did you? I am your father. Besides, you look at him the same way your mother looked at me. Theron folded his arms. The question is why he has not officially claimed you yet. Because he was broken when I found him. Drunk, self-destructive, lost. Kira looked away. I did not want to be claimed by someone like that. And now? Now he is different. Better. But still. She hesitated. You are still afraid, Theron finished gently. Afraid it is not real. Afraid he will fall back. Afraid the mate bond will not be enough. Kira nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Theron sighed and pulled his daughter into a hug. The irony of fate, he said, humor edging his voice now. I am willing to bet you hated him the moment you laid eyes on him. I did, Kira admitted against his chest. And now? Now I... She broke off, searching for words. Now you love him, Cedric said, stepping out of the shadows. Kira spun around, eyes wide. You were listening. I always listen, when it is about you. Cedric moved closer, ignoring Theron entirely. Because you are my mate. Mine. And I have proven myself, Kira. I have proven I can be better. I have proven I am worthy. Cedric. No. He cut her off, taking her hands in his. You told me to get better. I did. You told me to save my kingdom. I helped do that, a little, but I did. He moved closer, so near they shared the same breath. I am this man now. Not perfect, but worthy. And I need you. Kira was shaking. And if you slip, I will not. How can you be sure? Because, Cedric said, touching her face with gentle fingers, you are my certainty, my anchor, my reason, and I am not going to waste what fate handed me as a gift. Silence stretched. Theron cleared his throat discreetly. I will check the patrols, or something like that. He walked away, though Maya would have sworn she saw a smile on his face. Cedric and Kira were alone under the stars. I love you, he said at last. I love you, and I want to claim you in front of everyone. I want the world to know that you are mine, and I am yours. Cedric, do you love me? The question came out raw, almost broken. Kira closed her eyes, and then, finally, she admitted it. Yes. God's help me, yes. And she kissed him. It was not gentle. It was desperate, hungry, weeks of tension and denial dissolving into one perfect moment. His hands found her hair, her fingers gripped his tunic, and when the mate bond was finally, fully acknowledged by both of them, the surge of power made the stars seem brighter. Back in the main tent, Maya felt it the moment it happened. She smiled and glanced at Kaelin. They finally found each other. You knew? He asked, surprised. Since they arrived together. Maya touched her chest, where her guardian instincts pulsed. I feel those things now. Kaelin shook his head, amazed. My queen is full of surprises. Our queen, Aldrich corrected with a smile. She protects more than one kingdom now. 3 days later, when they returned to Thornwald, they did so with a northern escort. 100 soldiers led by General Theron himself, who insisted on seeing his daughter properly settled before returning. And that night, in Thornwald's great hall before the full court, it happened. Cedric, dressed in his formal princely colors for the first time in months, stood in the center of the hall. Kira stood beside him, wearing a dress Theron had brought, deep blue with silver embroidery that made her eyes shine. Court of Thornwald, Cedric said, his voice clear and firm. I present to you Kira, daughter of General Theron of Ashenfell, warrior, savior, and my mate. The hall erupted in whispers. Kaelin rose from the throne, descending the steps with Maya at his side. Then, Kaelin said, loud enough for all to hear, we witness, and we celebrate. Prince Cedric of Thornwald has claimed his mate, and we welcome her. He turned to Kira. You are welcome here, Kira of Ashenfell, not only as my brother's mate, but as an ally and friend of Thornwald. Kira bowed gracefully. And I will stay, as Ashenfell's official envoy, strengthening our alliance through a permanent presence. Theron, watching from the side, laughed loudly. Envoy, of course. His eyes gleamed with humor. Has nothing at all to do with your mate living here. Absolutely nothing, Kira replied, but she was smiling. And then, because the moment demanded it, Cedric pulled her into a kiss in front of the entire court. The hall exploded in applause. Maya, watching beside Kaelin, felt something warm and wonderful bloom in her chest. They were family now. All of them. That night, late, when the castle finally slept and the celebrations were over, Maya stood on the balcony of their chambers, looking up at the moon. It was full now, perfectly round, shining silver in the black sky. "Cannot sleep?" Kaelin asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Just thinking," Maya said, leaning back into him, "about everything that has changed, about where we were just months ago, and where we are now." "Regrets?" "Not one." She turned in his arms. "Scared sometimes. Amazed others, but never regretful." Kaelin kissed her forehead. "I love you. You know that?" "I do." Maya smiled. "And I love you. More than I ever thought I could love anyone." They stood there in comfortable silence for a long time. Maya was the one who finally broke it. "There is something I need to tell you." Something in her voice made Kaelin pull back enough to see her face. "What is it?" Maya took a deep breath, placing her hand over her own stomach. "I am pregnant." Kaelin's world stopped. You are sure?" "I am. My instincts." She smiled through the tears beginning to fall. "I feel the life growing. Still small, but there." Kaelin could not breathe, could not think, could not do anything but stare at the woman in his arms, his mate, his queen, the mother of his child, and feel a joy so deep it hurt. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby." And then he kissed her, pouring every emotion he could not put into words into that kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying. "We are going to be parents," Kaelin said, awestruck. "We are," Maya confirmed. "Are we ready?" "No," he laughed through the tears, "but we will figure it out together, like we always do." And beneath the full moon shining down like a blessing, they held each other, planning a future that had only just begun. Epilogue 6 months later. The Great Hall had never felt so alive. Maya, visibly pregnant now with her rounded belly prominent beneath a dark green dress, presided at the high table beside Kaelin. Her hand rested protectively over the baby who occasionally kicked, reminding her of their presence. Cedric sat on the other side of the table, Kira beside him. He had taken on more royal responsibilities in recent weeks, helping with council matters, overseeing training, proving himself worthy of the title of prince again. Kira watched him with barely disguised pride. "You are staring again," he murmured. "I always stare." They smiled at each other, and Maya saw Kaelin shake his head fondly. "You two are impossible," he said. "We learned from the best," Cedric shot back, gesturing toward Kaelin and Maya. Yrsa, seated near the fire, chuckled softly. "Young mates always think they invented love." Dinner went on in easy conversation. Plans for the baby, reports from Ashenfell that Kira had brought, news from the kingdoms that had signed the treaty, all of them keeping their word surprisingly. Peace. Real, tangible, glorious peace.